and jump right on into it, and I can backtrack with them at another time. What we're talking about today is unmanaged data and the way it's putting your organization at risk. And I know what you're thinking, but you don't have to sit through another security presentation today. I decided to go ahead and give you guys a break and talk about the other ways data is putting your company at risk. So the problem that I hope everybody here is happening is that your company is growing. And in 2024, when your company is growing, what that means is you're taking on more and more data. Whether you're doing this organically just from new customers, or you're acquiring your competitors, and now you have a new data center that you're bringing on. In all ways, you're bringing on more data into your company. And it needs to be managed properly. A lot of your peers are not doing this. And the way it's putting your organization at risk is through all these things up here, not just security, but the performance of your systems. You're blowing your project deadlines because you have to constantly fight fires in your data stack. Your budgets are going completely out of whack because you're in the cloud, and every time there's a problem, they just ramp up the costs on you guys. Or you're buying more hardware to solve problems. Or, probably the worst of all of these is probably data quality. You're getting bad data, duplicated data, or you're just not using your data at all to drive business insights. So I could wax on forever about all these, but with only 20 odd minutes, we're going to focus on data performance, because that's one that I don't think anybody else here is talking to you guys about today. So before I begin, who wants to define data performance for me? Any volunteers?
Generally defined?
Yeah.
The speed of your data, speed and efficiency.
Great. There's no real wrong answer to that question, because data performance is really a combination of IT and business leaders having to have a conversation about what your organization needs. And a lot of it hinges on speed and accessibility, like you just said. So when I'm talking about it, I typically break it into these three categories. First is access. Can your users get the data that they need, and only the data that they need? Can they modify the data that they need, and only the data that they need? Your marketing department might need access to the contents of your warehouse, but they can't change things because it's not their job. And if they do, it's going to throw everything out of whack. Reliability. Is everything up? Is it working properly? Is it fast enough? And fast enough is another thing you have to have a conversation with at different organizations, because a payment processor has to have sub-second response times. A hospital is going to hinge on quick performance of its electronic healthcare records, or else your nurses are going to be stacking in lots and lots of overtime because they're putting in entries and all the data, and it takes forever to load it all up. For legal groups, if you're trying to get 6 to 10 clients on the phone every hour, you're not going to be able to do that if your partners are waiting over and over again for your applications to load. So, those definitions of speed are different from every organization, but it's all part of the same conversation. And then scalability. And this is one where a lot of people throw money at this problem via hardware and cloud. Is everything going to work tomorrow? When you bring on new customers, when you buy your competitor, and you suddenly have double, triple, quadruple the number of users on your systems, are they going to fall apart? And an essential part of this is scalability, the cyclical nature of a lot of organizations. For example, in healthcare, winter is really busy. People are trying to use up all of their benefits at the end of the year, or they're starting new benefits at the beginning of the year, so they're hitting your systems a lot harder than they might be doing in spring or summer. In retail, a lot of holiday season shopping can take down your systems. Or in schools, you have beginning in semester, start and stop of semesters causing problems. Does anybody have a different cyclical problem that you guys have? Like a busy season that tends to drive you nuts? What do they cover?
Busy parts of the day.
Yes, busy parts of the day can also do it. Everybody logging on at 8 a.m., trying to download their schedules, trying to access information can have servers crash. We actually have a cool case study on that exact topic that I didn't include today.
I have one sort of like that,
Yeah.
where you have several different data sources that are pulling scheduled data pulls, like updating Power BI, using a production interface to do it, not having an architecture where you kind of offload.
Yep.
So pulling that, it's pulling Power Queries, it's pulling SSRS reporting, right? It's doing all of this stuff all day long. So the heavy load and heavy lifts are like the non-optimized sequels.
Yep.
Bring things down at say 3 p.m.
Yep.
And now everybody is screaming it's slow, in an environment where we have never defined what slow is. It's cabinetry.
It's slow if the user's complaining about it. That's what slow ends up being.
And that's it.
So, why do a lot of your colleagues have problems with data performance? It all boils down to this, and I'm sure all of you have experienced this in some way, right? The CEO, somebody's telling you things are slow at 3 o'clock today. The CFO says we're losing revenue because our page load times aren't fast enough. Whatever it is, they tell you it's your job to fix it. And so you've got your department heads, you've got your staff, you put them all in a room and you say, who knows what's wrong? How can we fix it? The problem is, most of the time these conversations don't end up being as productive as you want them to. Right? Your sysadmin blames network blames code, and then code people blame hardware or cloud, wherever you end up being. And then these guys love those conversations. Because they say, oh, I can solve it, I'm just going to charge you 30% more next month. And that comes into a whole host of problems. Most importantly, that whatever caused this is going to come back. And then you have to pay the increased spend again and again and again. And so it behooves you, as an IT leader, to make sure that you're enabling your team to get to the root cause of the performance problems in your data. And it behooves you because the buck stops with you guys. It doesn't matter what other project or priority the C levels or the VP levels have put on you guys, you still have to keep the systems in line. And do these numbers shock anybody, or do you kind of expect these responses? This was a survey I read a couple of weeks ago. From CIO.com, and they reviewed with a bunch of CIOs what the reasons were they were left off recently. And so the biggest one was application failures. Applications fail, company costs a lot of money, head start to roll, right? And then the other ones were project deadlines being missed and ignoring customer issues. And when I read this article, something clicked in my head. When you guys were starting off as IT managers or project managers, there was an old paradigm. You guys remember the triangle, where you could either have do it fast, do it cheap, or do it good, right? Well, that's kind of the old paradigm. Most of you at the larger organizations now have a new paradigm, even if you haven't been able to quite phrase it that way and figure out exactly what's going on. The new paradigm is stability, deadlines, and customers. And if we're really being honest, most of the time we're focusing on deadlines and customers. Because the CFO, the CEO are telling you, do these projects, they'll make us money. And so you put all of your attention down here, hoping that the stability lasts for a while. Or lasts until your slow season maybe. And then you can have maintenance in the spring when things aren't so busy. But then what happens when spring is actually busy that year? And things will slowly start to deteriorate. And so all of your VPs are putting all of these new responsibilities in your lap with all these projects. Everything from DR and failover to data management to BI, and all of them have their own problems that drive you nuts. Everything from legacy data and systems to unstructured data, scalability concerns, and you guys have to find a way to stay ahead of it. Because even though we're in that paradigm where you have stability, projects, and customers, you actually aren't allowed to ignore all three aspects of the triangle, even though you typically are only doing 2 of them at a time due to budget reasons and training and brain power, etc. So let's talk about how you can go ahead and hit all 3 aspects of the triangle. This shouldn't blow your minds, but hopefully refreshing you guys on all this will remind you of things that you can be doing better, right? You want to automate the time-consuming maintenance of all of your systems. You want to proactively monitor the entire stack of your application and networks, all the way down to the data layer. And this is where I see a lot of your peers getting it wrong. Because I even see it when I see the survey forms that events like this put out. They ask you if you're looking for network and application software, and a lot of you are saying yes. But they don't ask you to go deeper than that, right? So even the industry leaders who are telling you and reminding you of the things you have to do, forget to tell you to monitor the database layer. Because if you're automating your maintenance, which means actually doing it, and proactively monitoring the entire stack, you can actually prevent 60% of all of your problems and downtime just by doing that. And I didn't make up that number. I saw that number from so many different places that it kind of just blew my mind. And then when I talk to our DBAs, they tell me the same thing. 60% of problems, at least, can be prevented once we get the right automation, tooling, and proactive monitoring out there. And so once you have these 3 steps, what you need to be able to do is go back to that war room situation and completely shred it. You want to be able to get to the root cause of all of the problems, diagnose them clearly, and have a team that's trained both on the software and on the tools and technology so that they can remediate the issue quickly. And for a lot of you, you just need the tools to do that because you have great headcounts, you have great staffing. But what do you do if you can't add to your headcount? That's where we come in. Soaring Eagle Data Solutions. Finally going to talk about us. It's been 10 minutes, I'm allowed, right? Okay. Soaring Eagle Data Solutions. We are onshore data solution specialists. At our heart, we're a bunch of database administrators. And I got laughed at a couple of weeks ago for saying that because we're supposed to call them data engineers now. But really, we're database administrators and everything else that means in today's day and age. Everything from data layer security, server uptime and reliability. That's my favorite phrase these days, because that's essentially what we do in a nutshell, and I see job postings for this all the time. Moving things to the cloud, migrations, training on everything involving your data, and all the ways we can help you. And the core of our offering is 24/7 full onshore managed services. We are here today in partnership with SolarWinds. We're going to talk about their products in just a second. We're a big fan of their product, of their software, and especially one cool tool called SolarWinds DPA. Jeff's actually been using that tool since before SolarWinds bought it and improved it. He doesn't use it just because SolarWinds asked him to. He's been using it for over 15 years and trained the entire staff on it. So, how does everything work in the real world at companies like yours? This is a hospital here in Tampa, actually. We're within walking distance to it. Well, there's 3, so that doesn't narrow it down by a ton. But about 7 years ago, they were having massive server uptime problems. And in a hospital of this size, server uptime problems averaged $324,000 per event, and they were having multiple events per year. And they had 3 full-time DBAs dedicated to the what we now call server uptime and reliability of 125 servers. And they still weren't able to get it right. And that's why they brought us in. First thing we did, monitoring and automation. Get the right tools on the systems. First one is SolarWinds DPA, which I mentioned a minute ago. Allowed us to get granular on the root cause of the problems in the database stack and the way those databases interact with the rest of the application network environment. And secondly was our own tool that we call Flight. I'll talk in more detail about that in a minute, but that is how we automate the maintenance of the database layer, as well as do a lot of really fun stuff that, is anybody here with the DBA background? A little bit? Light. So all the things that used to drive you nuts, right? Whenever something would bother you, you would build something around it so it wouldn't bother you again, right? So we took the brain power of Jeff Garbus, all of his DBAs, and a whole bunch of other people, all those automations, and put them all in one spot for you, including one single pane of glass to view the health of your entire environment. Makes your life a whole lot easier. So with the right tooling, with the right monitoring, we tune the environment, we get everything up and running, and now the in-house team, those 3 DBAs, are taken off server reliability entirely and moved to projects and deadlines. Because they had been missing several key deadlines, including a really important one. They were growing rapidly, both organically, building out new locations, and acquiring smaller hospitals. So they weren't able to bring on and use the data in affecting patient care because they would go to this doctor here and then this doctor here, and they couldn't transmit the EHRs, a whole bunch of other ways. It was really frustrating for everybody. By the time we got everything together, and his team was finally able to concentrate on deadlines, I took Mr. R, our Chief Integration Officer, out to lunch a couple months ago, And I said, can you give me like a number, like how's your downtime issues? And he, instead of a number, give me this quote. Am I allowed to say this out loud in this room? The server downtime is down to damn near nothing. I thought that was a pretty good quote. I like to use it a lot because that's really what our goal is, to get that server downtime low, get everything responsive and up and running. But it doesn't end there. Mr. R was able to expand his role at the hospital, partially due to his ability to get the environment stable and working, and put another more than 300 servers under his control in his department. So what he does is, he has all his full-time employees integrate the data, work with the consumers, work with the users. All of the fun projects, he keeps in-house. And now we're handling all of those servers for him. So we're doing more than 3 times as much work as he was getting out of 3 full-time employees. And he's paying about a third of what he paid for previously. Because for all this work, which costs about as much as 1 full-time employee when he would need at least 9, maybe 12, under his old model of hiring DBAs in-house to do his maintenance and stability. Meanwhile, every time he has a customer, every time he has a question about Power BI, about different DBMSs, about security, he has people he can talk to about those who can put him in the right direction. So, am I still doing okay on time? Great. So let's talk real quick about the software solutions that we like to allow you to automate, monitor, prevent, and diagnose your problems. I mentioned Flight, and I want you guys to write something down for me. If you oversee any kind of server at all in your environment, please write down the phrase database corruption checks. Take that back to your team and ask them when the last time you ran those was on all of your servers. I don't care if you have 5 or 500, make sure they're being done. Because one of the biggest flaws we see in DR response and prep is that you spend millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a fantastic DR system, and then you put corrupted data into it. So you can't get it back out when that event happens and you need to pull it. And if you're not doing those database corruption checks, that's how you prevent the data from being corrupted, right? So that is just one of the dozens of things that we automate and check and respond to in Flight. And it gets really more in-depth and technical from there. Ask Jeff about them all. I only know a couple of them, just be honest. Moving on to DPA, this is your granular diagnosis of how the database interacts with all of your applications and network. The great thing about DPA is it's very easy to use and it visualizes everything very well. So if your team is fighting, it's because a code problem could look like a hardware problem, right? If your index is pulling back too much data, it looks like your hardware isn't enough to support it. But actually, you need to optimize those queries, and this will show you how to do all of that, show you why you're having those types of bottlenecks. And now lastly, hybrid cloud observability. I hate the name, but it kind of almost describes what it does. Hybrid cloud observability is what you would consider a standard network and application tool. Only does the role of 2 or 3 tools rolled into one, including security, which is why we like it. Near real-time alerts for network applications and security. And for those of you who need to get more in depth, they have plenty of add-ons. Out of the box, it probably replaces 2 pieces of software at least in your current stack. And then you can probably replace the rest with just the HCO and all of the add-ons it brings on, depending on how much depth you need with different parts of your application and security stack. And they all work really well together. As I mentioned, even before we became SolarWinds Advanced Partner, Jeff liked DPA so much, he made sure that Flight integrated with it so that they would work really well together. DPA is actually on 95% of our clients. So when you consolidate down to using the SolarWinds stack and Flight Monitor, you can reduce your alert fatigue, get rid of lots of the noise, and make sure you're getting the actionable response that you need and not having to sign into 5, 6, 7 different portals across all of your diagnosis and monitoring. As far as our side goes, the software is only a small part of what we do. Services is what we do. So this is how most people get started with us. We call it a health check. Essentially you say, this is that server that crashes at 3 p.m. every day. Jeff show us why it crashes every day and if we can fix it. And we'll go ahead and do that for you for a couple of days, help you implement the fix if we're allowed. Otherwise, we'll tell your team what the fix is so they can put it through their dev and test. Thank you, 5. Our managed services. Doesn't matter to us if you have a small environment or a large one. We are here to help you guys out. There are plenty of large companies that have only 3, 4, 5 servers. Dev, test, prod, maybe a second prod. And all kinds of projects and trading. I am going to keep moving because I want to talk about this client here on the top right, because they have a lot of problems that I'm certain all of you are facing right now. We met them at an event just like this one about 6 years ago. The CIO was laughing because he kept raising his hand because all of the problems we discussed were his problems. And he said, I'll talk to you in 3 months, I'm a little busy right now. 2 weeks later he called us because all of the systems are down, his team doesn't know how to get them back up, and he literally said, I'm throwing a Hail Mary at you. Show me what you got. 3 hours later, everything's back up and running. We onboarded 4 of his 12 production servers for interior political reasons. We couldn't do all of them to start. Fast forwarding because of time. About a year later, we did onboard the other 8 of the production servers because his team needed to focus on, to put it politely, they couldn't do the maintenance very well, so they're focusing on projects and end users. Fast forwarding a little bit more, they left very abruptly for political reasons. And after that, other aspects of the system started shutting down because these employees were not creating documentation, they were not creating runbooks, and nobody knew where the bodies were buried. So the new VP was pointing at the CIO and he was saying, is it you guys? What did you do? Well, we get into the rest of the system and find that they didn't have 12 production servers. They had 44. And the CIO himself didn't know about them. And it wasn't just SQL, they had Postgres and Oracle and MySQL. So, we get our hands around all of them. We get them monitored properly. We get them tuned properly. And we don't stop there, because why would we? A lot of what your peers are doing, every time you need to use SQL, you stand up a new server, right? That's the only way to get good use out of it. But you're spending way too much money. We were able to get this guy from 44 servers down to 24, putting $155,000 per year back into the budget, and we cost him like a third of that every year. And Jeff actually told me 20 minutes ago that that number is out of date. Apparently there's another 100,000 or so that we've saved them over the last couple of months. So, proactive tuning. So my question for you guys is, do you guys have overworked teams? Do you need to hit all 3 parts of that paradigm of stability, projects, and deadlines? If you do, we're here. Anybody have a data topic you want to talk about?